Hey, Katrina.
Katrina, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
It does work. Awesome.
Hey, LaToya.
So the mic's right there. So do you want to sit
Hello,
over
I can hear.
Mike?
Oh, right here. Okay.
Yeah, so
it picks up
do you
sound.
want
They
to
can
sit
hear us
here,
back here.
Courtney?
Okay. I can see it.
You can sit
Sit
here and face the
probably face
camera.
that way because the camera, that
Gotcha.
way you'll be
Okay.
facing
You
them.
want to bring him the that and the
Yes,
mouse?
I'm trying to pull up, he asked me to scan in a,
Oh, okay. Okay. Perfect. I was just worried about sound. Let me get this mic for Christy. We do kind of know what we're doing.
How many ages are you anticipating calling
Keller Williams, it's the streets.
Usually 10 or less.
in? Okay. Are they interactive? Like, will
Yes,
they,
a couple of them are.
will they participate?
Miller?
Yeah.
That's great. That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Okay.
Rose? No, she is on her way back from Locust Grove, I believe. And did you send it to the front desk email?
Zoom call. How you mute it? Huh? Press the camera.
I think I'll make sure it goes out, but she should be here, shortly. Honestly, I don't know. I'm not gonna, I was on vacation last week, so I really just don't know. Okay, I will find out and get it taken care of though. All right, you're welcome. All right, bye. I don't know why this is so slow, sorry.
Oh, no biggie at all. Oh,
Okay.
perfect. Okay.
Okay, so you, once you get here, I'll bring you the keyboard and everything, you will be able
And I
to
can-
share your screen.
Okay.
I think so. Okay. And, I can put it on Facebook Live, cause usually some people log in on Facebook and watch.
Whatever you prefer. Can we go back to the, I just want to go to the master settlement statement, so.
Start there.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, the entire presentation is gonna be based off of, the master settlement, yeah.
Okay.
So just kinda show me, what's going on, Tim?
Hey man, what's up, man? How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good to see you, bro.
Trying to be like you, man.
Man, come on, man.
I just need 2 pages out of your book. microphone is,
It's somewhere in the TV.
okay. My voice is not loud at all, so hopefully they'll be able to hear me.
Let's see. Can anybody on hear Courtney?
Testing. It won't be that loud though.
Let me make sure you're not muted.
No, we're not muted.
Hey, Katrina. Katrina. Okay. Oh, treasure. There's your copy. Okay. The treasure's in the class.
Okay.
Forgot y'all was in my computer. I'm looking around like somebody calling me.
Yes, so, Katrina, Courtney's gonna talk and.
Okay.
Can you tell us if you can hear him?
Can you hear me, Katrina?
I can definitely hear you.
This is my normal speaking voice.
And your normal speaking voice a little bit louder.
Okay, so you need me to be a little louder?
Yes.
Can we move the microphone? Maybe not.
Get the table closer.
Okay. All right. I'll just do that. Katrina, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And y'all can see the master settlement statement?
I can. Yes.
So in order to scroll down, okay,
It's just slow.
just delayed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Treasure, since I don't talk that loud,
Can we sit over there?
yeah, I'll start at
I
about
was like, what in the world?
I'll start at about 10:45 just to let the stragglers come in.
Okay.
Thank you for waiting for us.
Oh yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you guys for being in attendance.
Mr. Second.
Oh. There's one more time.
Well, now, first thing treasurer's learned is there's two pages.
There's 2 pages.
All right. Have you done a closing before?
I've been to a couple, but no,
Okay.
I have my own.
All right, good deal. That's exactly what I want. I want like new agents to be able to ask questions about the closing process.
I'm coming to get a form.
We're in the office, Katrina, if you want to come in the training room.
Yeah, I made about 10 copies if anybody needs any extra, but can they see my screen?
I can, but you know, my phone keep going off, people keep calling.
Katrina, can you see the screen? The master settlement statement?
I want one of your papers though.
Oh, okay, okay, so you can't see that?
Yeah, I can see.
Gotcha, gotcha, okay, all right, good deal. You wanna just stand here?
I can, I just was, only reason I was in my office because my phone keep going off.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, whatever works.
I can stay right here though, because I got closing on Monday, so I need you to really,
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
it's my first
if
one.
you wanna sit like
So I'm
me-
gonna have a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want questions.
And we come to see y'all, but it's just in another office.
No, that's fine, that's exactly what I want questions.
Okay. Let me get my phone.
All right. So how's it going?
It's going well. What about you?
No complaints, just busy and steady, you know.
House looks nice. You always look so good together.
Oh, thank you, I
I be too
appreciate
lazy in the morning.
it. Some people just naturally got it, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I woke up like this.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm thinking this will probably be about 30 minutes at the most, and I'll try to get you guys a meal maybe around 11:30 for those who are in attendance. So maybe Chick-fil-A or something like that. So we'll start at 10:45. I'll give them another 2 minutes, and then we'll go. Would this be recorded? Like where you can go log back in? Really?
Yeah, you gotta,
So it's just live. But if it's on live Facebook, look at it.
it's on live Facebook and they can go back and watch it anytime.
Okay, all right, cool. I go live 10:45. We're about to go live.
Look like it's, tell me, this is a mock closing.
Yeah.
He asked what is the event?
Okay, all right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Courtney Ricks. It is 10:45, so we'll go ahead and go live. Again, it is 10:45, so we'll go live. Thank you, everybody who is in attendance, and if you're looking at this afterwards, I appreciate the cooperation as well. Basically, what this is Closing 101. Closing 101 is basically going through the enactment of mock closing. So we'll cover a master settlement statement in thorough detail. We'll go from seller numbers, buyer numbers, and the way I would like for this to work is I like to go through the master settlement statement. It will probably take about 30 minutes. I want to get a very thorough explanation so when you guys go to closings, if you're new agents, you have an understanding of what to explain to your buyers and what to explain to your sellers and how we come up with different numbers, how the lenders come up with different things and what they mean, which just gives you a lot of credibility at the closing table. So the way I would like for this to work is I would like for you to really engage and ask questions. That's the way I think that we learn the best. In law school, they teach us through what's called a Socratic method. The Socratic method means that a professor gives you a reading assignment, you come in the next day or the next class day, and the professor asks questions and the students are engaged and they basically teach themselves. And if one student is off track, the professor kind of gives them, puts them back on track if they're derailed. So that's what I would like. The more questions, the better, because I really can't anticipate what questions you would have. I can only try to give you the best explanation that I can, but if you engage, that really helps because I can address your specific questions and any other additional questions that you have. So with that being said, in front of us is a master settlement statement. At this point, what we're doing is we're having buyer and seller come into the closings. There are no agents involved. So we'll try to get the master settlement statement out to the agents prior to closing. Therefore, you can review them and make sure that there are not any discrepancies. When I begin a closing, I'll have a seller and a buyer sit, social distancing, and we'll basically go through numbers from top to bottom. So that is what I intend to do. But the way I'll do it is I'll actually give an explanation of what the numbers are. So the settlement date is the date of closing. This file here closed on July the 10th. The closer is Bridget Crawford. That's an internal thing. That just lets me know who I'm getting my documents to. It would either be Bridget or Christy. And that closer is the person which is the liaison with the lender and the mortgage closer. So they're getting the funding documents, the closing disclosures, etc., to the buyer and back and forth so we can get a funding number for the file.
They work for they are the lender, or they work for O'Kelly.
Right,
Representing the lender.
so that closer works for O'Kelly and Sorohan, but also there is a closer that works for the lender, so they're working hand in hand.
Okay.
They're getting documents back and forth to each other.
Okay.
Okay, all right, good question. So borrower is going to be your buyer. In a real estate closing, you have a buyer, someone who's purchasing the property, and you also have a seller, the person selling the property. Just to give you a background on the seller, a seller can be an entity, which means it can be an LLC, it could be a company, it could be a corporation, it could be a
You call
trust,
me.
it could be an individual,
You making chicken sausage? You made me want to hear you made them.
how do I do that?
You already made yours.
You want to run it?
That one over there with a yellow.
I gotta open this up because this is not.
Hey, could everybody mute themselves? I think we have background noise. Hello? Okay. All right, good deal. So as I was stating, a seller can be an individual, a seller can be a company. If it is a company, then that means the authorized signer is going to come in and sign on behalf of the company. It could be a trust. That means the trustee is going to sign for the seller. And same for buyer. A buyer can be an individual. It can be a company. It can be an LLC. My name is Courtney Ricks. But either way, typically you're going to have an individual as a seller, you have an individual as the buyer. Okay. Going to property location is the physical address of the property that we're conveying at closing. So you would have 123 Main Street, Stockbridge, Georgia 30281 there. And that isn't necessarily the most important thing. When you're looking at the physical location of a property, the legal description is what we verify that has to match. Okay. All right. So the first thing you see is sales price. Sales price of the property. This particular file is $298,750. The sales price is negotiated between the buyer and seller. Once you have a binding agreement, that sales price is locked in. However, sales price can change. It can go up or down. If there's an appraisal issue, the seller may agree to reduce the sales price of the property, or they may decide to increase it. If that occurs, buyer's agent and seller's agent are going to get with their clients and sign an amendment, and then that can change the sales price of the property. The second thing we see is a deposit. A deposit is basically earnest money. Earnest money is contracted as well. The earnest money is the buyer's good faith intention to show that they want to purchase the property. In contract law, that's called consideration. So you have offer, acceptance, and consideration. The buyer's giving up $2,000 in order to hold their spot on purchasing the property. Loan amount is what the bank is giving the purchaser. So the loan amount here, $273,580. Basically, this is what the lender gives to the buyer in order to finance the property. The next thing we see is seller credit. So the seller credit is basically whatever the seller is providing to the buyer towards closing costs. In this case, it's $8,963. How do we get to this number? It's contracted. The seller does not have to provide closing costs to buyer. However, if the buyer requested and the seller consents, then whatever that amount is will be contracted. In this case, it is $8,963. HOA prorations, homeowners associations dues typically are paid for the full year. So when you see this 239.07, if you look at the date, it is from July the 10th, which is the date of closing, through December the 31st. That amount is 239.07. How do we get that number? We get that number from doing a prorated amount of the annual fee, and then you take that amount and you divide it from the date of closing through the end of the year. So in this case, that That fee is $239.07, and I'm not sure if that fee was maybe $500. It probably was around $500. So from July the 10th through December the 31st, the HOA amount is $239.07, and the buyer pays that, which shows as a debit, and the seller receives a credit because they've already paid it for the full year. Interesting, you'll see payments on the buyer's side. It's not uncommon that the lender will require for the buyer to pay certain things off that show up on their credit report. So here, the lender is saying, hey, buyer, if you're going to purchase this property, you're going to have to pay off Prosper Market, Plave, Discovery Financial, JC Penney's, and Comedy Bank. So you'll see the different payoffs that the buyer is paying off at closing. $15,676.19, $5,000 and change, $2,000 and change, and then $374 and change. The next one is a very common, this is common that I'll get questions about county taxes. So how do county taxes work out? Well, the seller is going to pay county taxes at closing. However, the county tax bill is not released until later on in the year, typically September, October, maybe even November, depending on the county. Every county is different. So with this file closing in July, how do we know the amount of taxes to assess to seller in order to apply to buyer? I'll give you guys a moment to see if you want to address that question. If not, I'll explain it. Does anybody want to volunteer how we came up with the amount of $1,473.35?
Or is it based on their escrow account? The seller's escrow account?
That's close. It's very close. Very close. So Katrina said, is it based on their escrow account? And that's kind of the right answer. Anybody else want to take a stab at it?
So wouldn't you just look at the tax records and see if it was paid for that year or not? And then, like, do the dividing for how many days?
Gotcha. So I think
We got fall and spring
so I think
for some, right?
if you take what Katrina said and if you take what Treasurer said, you get the perfect answer. So basically, most sellers, if they have a loan, they are going to have an escrow account that will pay their county taxes. And then what Treasurer said is that you look at the tax bill. So we don't know what the 2020 taxes are going to be because the bill isn't out. So the best thing we can do is get as close as we can. So we'll go to the 2019 bill, we'll take that full amount, and then we'll prorate from the first of the year through the date of closing. So that's how we came up with the $1,473.35. And I explained that at closing, hey, I don't know exactly what taxes are going to be, but they're going to be pretty close to what they were last year. And the way we explain it in the acknowledgement form is that if there's a discrepancy, if taxes go up or down, then the buyer and seller would work that out amongst themselves outside of closing.
Oh, really? So they don't get to, if once they disperse your escrow account, when they pay your taxes, then you either, you get a reimbursement for the overage, or they tell the bank if you have an escrow account.
Absolutely, that's absolutely correct. But in this case, the county taxes are going to be separate from the escrow account because the escrow account is not going to pay the seller's county taxes because we're going to pay that closing.
Okay.
So the seller's going to have to go back to their mortgage company and say, hey, O'Kelly and Sorohan paid my taxes, so whatever money you have for me, just send it back to me.
Okay.
So they may have principal and interest, they may have escrow for taxes, insurance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Great analysis. And that's honestly, that's the most common question I get at a closing from the seller. All right. So let's address commissions. I'm pretty sure you guys want to hear about commissions. Does anybody know what a broker admin fee is? Broker admin fee, $395. I believe this is a Keller Williams file. Very simple. It's just a fee that goes to the broker. Looks like there are two broker admin fees here. So one is $395 paid by buyer. One is $495 paid on behalf of seller. How do we figure out who pays fees? It's all based on your commission agreement. You guys will assess if the buyer pays it versus if the seller pays it. The next we have is something that I think you're going to be very, very familiar with, which is the listing and selling commission. Typically, the selling commission is most likely is going to be 3%. each side. However, there are circumstances where, you know, there may be 3 and 2 or 3 and 1 or 3 and 0. But either way, this one here looks like it's 3% each side. So the listing commission, which is the agent who represents the seller, is receiving $8,962.50, and the selling commission, which is the agent who represents the buyer, is receiving the same amount. All right. So
I
now,
have a question.
sure.
So that 3% is additional, the admin fees are additional to the 3% commission.
Yep, exactly.
And you said that it's negotiated between the agent for the buyer and seller?
Well, the way the commission structure is set up, typically the seller is going to pay the commissions. However, some sellers may say, I don't want to pay an admin fee.
Right.
So if,
I've never heard of an admin fee. I've never discussed it with none of my clients.
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure as a Keller Williams agent, your broker may charge an admin fee. I will get with your broker to figure it out. If you haven't done one now, that's completely okay. But most likely you will get to the point where there's an admin fee. And if so, if the seller gives you kickback, you may have to get with your buyer and say, hey, there's an admin fee that's going to assess to you. All right. So now we're going to talk about loan charges. The way I explain loan charges at a closing is I say, hey, the next section on your master settlement statement is loan charges. These are an itemization of all your lender fees. So the first one you see is a 0.509 of loan points. What does that mean? 0.509% of loan points. Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Set of loan points?
Is it the same as a discount point?
Absolutely, you're correct. What is a discount point, Treasurer?
It's like, if you say, okay, I'm gonna get an FHA loan and then they're gonna pay 96%, and then you're like, oh, I have some more money, so I can pay a little more, so you kind of get a discount on your loan.
Like
Yeah.
you're buying down your interest?
There you go. All you're doing is buying down your interest rate. So they're paying 1.39 to 52 to buy the interest rate down 0.509% of the loan. So yeah, very, very simple. You just buy your interest rate down. So you can either pay it up front or you can pay it in your monthly payment. Administrative fee is basically just an admin fee that the lender charges for whatever administrative fees they have in order to process the loan. Appraisal fee looks like the buyer paid this outside of closing. I would think 90% of the time the buyer is going to pay their closing outside of closing. There may be some times where the lender will pay the appraisal fee, or there may be some fees that are assessed to buyer, but typically that's always going to be paid outside of closing by the buyer. Credit report fee is just a fee that the lender charges in order to run the buyer's credit. Typically they'll run credit when they first apply for the loan. They may also run it a couple additional times, and maybe even prior to the loan closing, make sure the buyer didn't get any additional debt before closing. Flood certification fee. This is a fee that analyzes and assesses if the property is in a flood zone or if it's not in a flood zone. Mortgage insurance premium to HUD. Does anybody want to take a stab at this one? This is a pretty good one.
MIP.
Yeah.
So that is because this FHA, is it under, because if they're paying under 20%, then they have the MIP, is added on to their loan. And it used to drop off once you pay 80%, but now for a lot of the loans, it's for the life of the loan.
Great. Fantastic. I agree with 100% of what Katrina said. In simple terms, all the mortgage insurance premium is just insurance that the lender can charge if your loan to value is above 80%. So yeah, if the buyer defaults, then they're going to file a claim, and that's what they paid in order to make sure they get paid back on default. Prepaid interest is a good one. So does anyone want to take a stab at what prepaid interest is? $453.42. If you pay a close attention to it, it says $20.61 per day from July the 10th through August the 1st.
That's because the mortgage, they already made the mortgage, right?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Wait. The prepaid, when did this close?
It's closing on July the 10th.
July the 10th.
Mm-hmm.
So the prepaid interest is going to the borrower because I know it has to do with the mortgage payment.
Right.
It has to do, if the seller has already paid their mortgage payment.
Don't think about the seller, it's the buyer, it's the buyer fee.
Okay.
Don't think about the seller.
Because I'm thinking about the loan going to the 10th, is the middle of this, the middle of the month. It wasn't the first. If it was the first, then they wouldn't have to pay it, right?
All right, so let me explain. You want to take a stab at it, Treasurer? All right, does anybody that's listening want to take a stab at prepaid interest before I provide an explanation? Going once, going twice,
You
okay.
have to unmute yourself. They would have to unmute.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, so I'll explain prepaid interest, and a lot of people ask this question. So the way a loan works is this loan is closing on July the 10th. But when are they making their first mortgage payment?
Maybe 2 months.
If they're not making their first mortgage payment until September 1st. So when that payment is made on September 1st, what actually is it applying to? It's applying from August the 1st. So you're paying your mortgage in arrears, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So the lender's going to charge interest until that first payment is made. And that interest on the loan is $20.61 per day. So you take that and you multiply it by how many every days it takes you to get to August the 1st. And then therefore they're covered from the date of closing through until when they begin to build the note.
Okay. There's a question, I'm sorry, and it was back up here about the admin fees.
Mm-hmm.
It's asked, are there always going to be 2 broker admin fees?
Most likely not. It could work either way. I mean, I would say typically you may not even see an admin fee, and if so, it's probably going to be one side. It's not even typical that you would have one, but I just wanted to use this so you can be familiar with it. If it ever does come up, you won't be shocked by it.
Now, when we're in conversation with your office before closing, is that something that comes up that you should ask?
No, I mean, when you give me your commission sheet, it's going to lay out everything. It's going to lay out basically what your percentage is. It's going to lay out if there's an admin fee or not, and it'll lay out how you want it to be dispersed. So
what do you mean by commission sheet? What is a commission sheet?
A commission sheet is something that I receive from the agents, and it tells me what the percentage is of commission, and it tells me who's going to receive what.
No, that's not the DA.
Well,
is it in the BBA?
Well, the DA is a even more is a more elaborate part of a commission agreement. Commission just tells me, I mean, you could, let's say you're working.
We're trying to figure out what forms we need to be giving you prior to closing.
Yeah, I definitely, and it is very common that I don't get a commission from agents, and I get it at the last
I
minute.
don't know.
So would that be the instructions to close an attorney for?
No, it's going to be I'm not sure exactly what. If it's, I don't think it's F511 or whatever, but it's just commissions. It's gonna have commissions at the top. It's gonna have a percentage. Typically, that percentage would be 6%. It'll be 3. Let's say, just in a perfect world, it'll be 3% on seller side.
Oh, that
3% on
must be
buyer
coming
side.
from who has the listing.
Well, yeah, it could come from either or, but I need to have a commission form signed by both agents, and that shows me how to disperse your checks. And then if you do have a disbursement authorization, I would need that if you want a specific breakdown on where to send money where. So if you're getting a check specifically cut to you, and your broker's getting a check, et cetera, that all will be broken down. So we were at we were at prepaid interest. Okay, the next section, homeowners insurance and property taxes. This is an escrow disclosure. Basically, the lender is going to pay the homeowners insurance and the property taxes. And the reason they're going to pay that is because if the buyer doesn't pay it and there's a lien that's filed on the property, then that's going to put a cloud on the title where the lender doesn't have first lien position. And they don't want that to happen. So as a courtesy and also as a behoovement to the lender will pay homeowners insurance and property taxes out of an escrow account. So what they do is they show you what goes into the escrow account. Homeowners insurance, they're depositing 3 months at $147.92. Property taxes, they're depositing 11 months at $235.27. Hey, Des. Hey, we got 2 agents. So
with the master let me have.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, good deal. Thank you so much. So they're doing property taxes at 11 months. The reason they're doing that is because they have to have something in order to start the account. You'll see the aggregate adjustment is $591.68. Typically what happens is the lender has reached a certain threshold and they're saying, hey, I don't need that much money in the escrow account, so I'll kick something back to the buyer. So that's what the aggregate adjustment means. Title charges. When I talk about title charges, we're talking about what you pay to the closing attorney. These are our closing attorney's fees or something that comes with clearing title. My explanation is that the closing attorney gets marketable title for the lender and the buyer at the closing table.
They usually provide the title company you've used.
Mhm.
And when should we ask whether the title has been cleared? How long before closing?
You won't be able to close without clear title. I don't think you would necessarily have to ask unless there are title issues, and if so, the closing attorney should be reaching out to both agents and saying, hey, this is what I have on title, and I probably need something to cure it, most likely from the seller side.
Okay.
Okay. So satisfaction prep for seller. I'm really not sure what that is. Satisfaction prep, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe the seller has some issues we have to clear, and that's just a fee that we charge the seller. Buyer post-closing fee. That post-closing fee is something that you'll see on buyer and seller side. It's basically whatever it costs for us to handle the file outside of closing. Remember at the top of this master settlement statement, the buyer had all those payoffs. So we got to send all those checks to all those different people. It costs postage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what the post-closing fee encompasses. Closing protection letter is basically protection to the lender. It protects the lender from any errors that the attorneys might have made prior to closing, even if the attorney skips out and skips town or something. But that's a lender fee. It's a protection letter that the attorney provides for the lender. Examination fee. So the way, this is probably one of the most important and interesting fees in my opinion, because as soon as I get a contract, I'm going to send it out to a title abstractor or a title examiner. And what they're going to do is they're going to scrape title and they're going to look for liens, bankruptcies, spy phase, federal tax liens, divorces. They're going to look for anything that may encumber title. And it costs those attorneys, a time to go to different counties and to run those different deed books. So that examination fee is what it costs for us to get our title exam from the examiners. And then at that point, it lets us know if it's a clean title or if there's a lot of work that we need to do in order to get it clear. Lender's title insurance, $905. This is the same thing as an owner's title policy, but it's just one that goes to the lender. What does the lender's title policy do? What does the owner's title policy do? I'll explain them both together. It just guarantees that you have clear title if there's any issues post-closing. So if a seller wants to sell a property, and let's say there's an open security deed down the road, and the seller's going to say, hey, well, I have an owner's title policy, so it ought to protect me or indemnify me if I have to defend something that comes up after closing. Settlement fee. Settlement fee is the standard fee that the closing attorney receives in order to handle the file. Title clearing, so look, the $75 looks like there was a title clearing fee, so it looks like this title might have been pretty tough to clear. So therefore, we're charging an additional fee in order to get past whatever the documents we needed to draft, whether they be affidavits or whatever, or reaching out to different law firms and getting underwriter approval. Recording fees. So recording fees, very standard. These fees typically will not change. Recording fees is the cost of recording everything from the seller into the buyer. So the Superior Court, $59. GRMA fees, the Georgia Residential Mortgage Act. This is the standard fee that the lender has to pay whenever they record a security deed, and that $10 is just automatically passed down to the buyer. Intangible taxes, this is a tax that is paid whenever there's a security deed recorded in the deed books and the security deed has a duration of more than 3 years. Transfer taxes is just a tax that the buyer pays whenever title was conveyed from seller into buyer, and that you're going to see on whether it's a cash transaction or whether there's a lender involved. All right, HOAs, every once in a while you have a homeowners association, so let's look at some of their fees. HOA dues, looks like, this was $250, and this was, I think it was for the full year. They didn't say what it was for, but most likely that $250 was for the full year. Keep in mind that the seller received the credit up front from today's date through the end of the year. So the seller's not going to pay for the full year. They're going to pay from the time they own the property, from the first of the year through the date of closing. And if it is paid for the full year, the seller will receive reimbursement from the date of closing through the end of the year. Homeowners insurance. I want someone to tell me what homeowners insurance is right here. $1,775.
Isn't that just like fire, flood, just like?
So,
random house stuff?
does anybody have a car that they drive? All right, do you have insurance on your car? It's the exact same thing. Homeowners insurance is just insurance, like Treasure said. It just protects the, that's basically, they call it hazard insurance. So in the event that the home is destroyed or if there's some damages to the property, this is the insurance company that you're filing the claims on. The homeowners insurance in this section is going to be paid 12 months in advance. So it's basically paid 12 months in advance. So they won't pay back into the homeowners insurance until next July. Home warranty is $525, and it's on the seller side. Can someone tell me what that means? $525 home warranty.
Or it's being paid by the seller. Like it was probably, not to exceed, you know, the seller is gonna provide the buyer with a home warranty on the property for a year.
Great, good job. Thank you so much. So Katrina hit the nail on the head. What that means is that the seller is providing a home warranty to the buyer. The home warranty can be anywhere from $350, it could be up depending on the value of the home and what they're insuring. It could be, you know, it could be maybe $500, $600, $700. And typically they are going to be about 12 months. You typically don't see them go past the duration of 12 months. So what happens is the buyer and the seller are going to have a contract. The buyer is going to say, well, I'll buy the house, but I want the seller to give me a home warranty. So if the refrigerator breaks down, the hot water heater breaks down, or the microwave or the stove goes out, I don't want to come out of pocket because I'm spending so much money in order to get into the property. And I'm also spending money buying furniture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to insulate myself from those types of expenses, at least for the first year.
Right.
And a seller typically consents if they know that they have put in some healthy equipment in the property. If not, they may just say, well, I'll replace the stove. Either way, that's something that you guys would work out. Termite contract, $49. This is not a termite bond. This is basically just a check from the termite company. They're just saying, hey, we ran a termite check. We didn't see any infestation. So we're saying that there's no infestation on the property. $49, and typically the seller's going to pay for that and give it over to the buyer.
So what's the difference between that and the termite bond?
The termite bond is going to be where they're servicing it for an extended amount of time. Maybe they're going to come out and treat it. It's probably going to be a little more expensive than just $50.
So
They're
if
just,
they find termites, they can get on it.
no, it just depends on whatever the seller has. Most buyers get something standard. It's just a termite letter. That termite letter just says, hey, we checked the property out. We checked it out, and it's going to say no infestation, no infestation. And then the buyer can go in and get it treated, and they can get protection from a termite company if they choose to going forward. All right, so now we have our final numbers. Final numbers, balance due from buyer is $53,122.11. The balance due to the seller is $269,158.72. Sellers are encouraged to get wires, especially for larger amounts. I'll wire the money. I do not charge it. It comes out of the $75 post-closing fee. And if the seller chooses to get a wire, I'll wire it directly to that person's account. And therefore, they don't have to go through the hassle of taking a physical check, uploading it through the mobile app, or taking it to the bank and then waiting on the bank to approve it. Typically, something for that amount is probably going to put maybe a 10-day hold on it. So if you're speaking with your seller and you say, hey, you're going to get a lot of money back at closing, I would recommend you get your wiring instructions so Courtney can know how to get your money to you. I would need his bank name, his or her name, and then the 9-digit routing number and their account number, and I'll have them fill that out at closing. For buyers funds are gonna be $53,122.11. So how am I gonna get the money from the buyer? Somebody explain that to me.
From the lender.
Okay, so that's balance due from buyer. So the lender is giving them 200, and how much are they giving them?
Well, their loan looks like.
Yeah, the loan amount is 273,580.
273,580.
Yeah, so this amount here, 53,122.11, who does it come from? Gotcha, because it says from who? All right, okay, who is
So
the
that
borrower?
is the subtraction of the 286 and the 273.
So the total amount to start everything is 339,730.14. When you take all of the credits and add them up, you get $286,608.03. Therefore, somebody has to come with $53,122.11 in order to close the transaction. So that's basically the amount that I need from the buyer in order to close the loan.
Okay, say it again, because I'm confused. The loan amount is 273,580. Everything added up, once all the debits and credits, the borrower has $286, $608.03 that they have to
No, those are credits that are already there.
already there.
So if you take the amount that I need to close it, 339,730.14, and you subtract the amount of credits that the buyer already has coming into closing, the deficit is $53,122.11. So that's what the buyer brings. Typically, you don't see that much, maybe 5 or 10,000, 7,000, 8,000. Every once in a while, the buyer can receive money at closing. But the point I want to make is that when the buyer brings in an amount larger than $5,000, then that has to be wired to us. So if you know your buyer, you've looked at the preliminary HUD, you've looked at the closing disclosure, and let's say it's looking like your buyer's going to have to bring in 12,000. With us being in a pandemic, you want to make sure that you're proactive with your buyer. You say, hey, Katrina, you close on your property in 3 days. You're going to need to wire that $12,000 to O'Kelly and Sorohan prior to closing. So when we get there, they'll have your money. My obligation is to get you your numbers. The lender provides those numbers to us, and as soon as I receive them, I'll let you know how much money your buyer needs to bring to the table. But anything larger than $5,000, I can't accept a cashier's check. I can't accept a personal check. I can't accept a money order. I need that money wired in. Okay, so just be on the lookout. If your buyer's bringing in more than $5,000, be proactive and say, hey, Katrina, you're gonna bring in $8,000, maybe $9,000. That money has to be wired. Let's get your bank on the line, get an appointment set up, so the day before closing, you can go and wire that money in. I'll get the wiring instructions from O'Kelly and Sorohan, so we can already have that process moving forward. I have seen it where buyers don't have their wire in, and then the bank is not accepting appointments, and then you have issues where you have a delay in closing, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I need to call.
You don't want to really have
Because I
that.
don't have this, know what my buyer is for.
Yeah. So we covered the master settlement statement. What I want to do now is just open it up for any questions that you might have. And it honestly does not have to pertain to this sheet. Any questions you guys have regarding anything regarding the closing attorney, the law firm, what we do, what to expect at a closing, whatever it is. I like to entertain questions. I think that if you guys have specific questions, I'm really here to entertain those and try to make things easier for you as the new agents.
I have a question. To make this transaction move smoother, I know you said that in your office you're not allowing agents. If an agent was to come to Florida, what would they be there for?
Okay, so Katrina's question, for anyone who didn't hear it, I disclosed earlier that right now, due to the pandemic, we're only allowing essential parties inside the closing room. What that means is that if there's a seller, then the seller is allowed to come in. If there's a buyer, the buyer is allowed to come in. If there are two buyers, both buyers can come in. If there are two sellers, both sellers can come in. If it gets too crowded, I may make a decision if I have the space to put buyers and sellers in another room. Otherwise, I may just social distance my room so no one's uncomfortable. We are asking that anyone who comes to a closing wear a mask. I'll wear a mask. We sanitize the rooms. We sanitize the pens you use. They're yours to keep. We don't ask for them in return. However, Katrina's question was, what are the circumstances where an agent is allowed to be in the room? And to be honest with you, there are no circumstances where an agent should come to closing. If everything is done right, an agent's going to review documents with the buyer and seller. They're going to say, hey, this is what you should expect. Courtney is going to talk. He's going to have you sign some papers. You'll get out of there. If you're getting a wire, you can leave. And then for the buyer, you're going to sign a couple more documents than the seller signs. And he'll walk you through, this is what your note should be. You'll sign these documents, and then once everything is over, you'll come out. And if you guys choose to take your photos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, in the legal world, there's always an exception to the rules, right? So what are exceptions? Well, I've had several exceptions where, let's say you have a seller or a buyer who's mature in age, and they need someone to help them to sign, or they need someone to help them in the signing process. If you have a circumstance of that nature, let me know up front, and I'll approve if you can come in or not. If it's something valid, I'm not gonna give you pushback. Typically, if there's a language barrier, my Espanol is not that good. It's very poquito. No hablar español muy bien. With that being said, if you have a Hispanic buyer, seller, or if you have someone who speaks a different language and you need a translator, the agent speaks both languages, that only helps things to go smoother. So when it comes to translating, when it comes to maybe there's a feeble buyer or seller, they need some assistance, someone's a little older, they really want someone to hold their hand. If you run that by us in advance, we'll try to approve it, but also keep in mind, we're making safety our best bet. If you just have someone who wants to sell it, if you have a seller or a buyer who just wants their agent to attend closing with them and it's not a valid reason, I will not approve it. Again, with the pandemic going on, these are not traditional days. It's not a traditional closing. The first thing I disclose is that my primary objective is to keep everybody safe. My family, my staff's family, the agent's family, and also the buyer and seller's family. And due to the governor's order, we have to reduce the traffic inside of our closing room and also inside of the office period.
So I have another question. What about POAs? So how are you, when do we need to submit the information for a POA if a POA is going to be used?
I need, so if the buyer, number one, the buyer information sheet and the seller information sheet are documents that the pre-closing team sends out to agents. And then that lets me know if your buyer can attend or if your seller can attend or not.
When do you get those?
I should get them as soon as I start your file. So my pre-closing team should send that out to you, and you should get that back to me. And if there's a need for a power of attorney, then we can execute it for you. Or if you already have one, you send it to us, and we'll see if we can approve it.
Wait, what is this form?
So if you represent the buyer, then there is a basic form. It's called a buyer information sheet. And the buyer information sheet is going to give you certain information about your buyer, whether they're coming to closing, whether
Now,
they
what
can
if you,
sign.
I know, what if they send it straight to do they send it to the agent or they send it to the
It
actual?
should come through the buyer. I mean, it should come through the buyer's agent, and it should come through the seller's agent. It shouldn't typically come through the seller unless they don't have an agent. And then also the seller information sheet is going to be more detailed, and it gives us information regarding the seller, if there's a payoff, if there's a homeowners association, if they're Georgia residents, if they lived in the property, if there's a mobile home, are they coming to closing, do they need a power of attorney, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That should be the first thing that my pre-closing gets out to you once we get the contract uploaded. So that tells us whether there's going to be a power of attorney or not. Power of attorneys is basically the agent for buyer or seller. So if it's one power of attorney, the signing for buyer or seller, that person is the essential party to signing. Sometimes the agent can be the power of attorney. If so, then that means the agent comes in to sign on behalf of the client, which is the buyer or seller. If that's the case, you have to get broker approval. I think Keller Williams has some stringent guidelines on if, especially for seller, I believe, if you can be the power of attorney. So just get with your broker on that to clear whatever guidelines they have. But if there's a power of attorney, the power of attorney is going to come in and sign on behalf of the buyer and seller. Good questions, great questions. What other questions do we have? If any. All right, I remember some questions from last year when I did this class. I can't think of the young lady who asked it, but she said, "Hey, what should we be doing in the closing?" And at that time, there was a lot of new agents in the room, and I just said, number one, you know, what you guys do as agents, from my perspective, what you do as an agent is that you're basically babysitting the buyer or seller throughout this entire process. You're like a nurturer. So if you have a seller who's very antsy and anxious, then you have to set an expectation. This is going to work out. This is what you expect. If you have a buyer who's nervous, it's their first time purchasing a property, you have to set an expectation. It's going to work out. The client is going to reach out to you guys to be the person of peace, whether it's peaceful or not. A lot of transactions may not be peaceful, but I would say that the agent's role in a closing, when we were doing the face-to-face closings, would be prior to closing, making sure that your buyer had their money, making sure that they had their identification, making sure that the seller, was doing whatever they needed to handle prior to closing, making sure that they got to the closing table, making sure that they were clear about what to expect on the master settlement statement. You hate to see that there's an amendment that's signed by buyer and seller. The seller doesn't understand what it is, and then he doesn't want to sign anything because the agent failed to explain, hey, this is what this amendment means. You're going to give an additional $1,000 to the buyer to fix whatever. And then they see that $1,000 and they don't want to sign it because they feel that they're getting duped. And then also, let me know as the closing attorney if you have some issues where buyer and seller have a turmoil or they don't need to be in the same room. I need to know those types of things in advance, because I don't want to walk into a tornado. I like to kind of know in advance if there's some things that we need to deal with.
Does that happen often?
I mean, it's not uncommon that parties are not cordial. Honestly, I mean, the more closings you do, you realize that, you guys are putting out a lot of fires. There may be perfect closings, and I hope that that's the way that it works out for you, but I think that you guys as agents, you really earn your commissions. And, you really have to be like a quiet to the storm. So I would just say set an expectation, try to be a problem solver, try to learn as much as you can, and try to give that information to your clients so they're not steamrolled at the closing table. Because if they have that anxious energy and you have that anxious energy, the closing attorney has to really try to bring that calm, and that's a tough job. So have confidence, ask a lot of questions, and communicate with us. If you haven't filed with us, I mean, we're right across the hall. You can come through and ask a million questions. Our pre-closing team is available. Our post-closing team is available. Our closers are available. And if it's something that needs to come through me, I'm available as well, as long as I'm not in the closing. So that would be just a token of what I would say. Try to anticipate things as they come up. Ask questions from your broker, other agents, and just learn as you go. What other questions did you guys have? No other questions?
What was the payment to marketplace again?
So that there, you probably won't see that much, Treasure. The
That's
reason.
just individual type seller stuff that needs to get paid?
No. This is on the buyer side. So basically, let's say a lender runs a credit report on a buyer and he says, man, this guy's he has too much debt. So he may say, you know what, I'll give you the loan, but in that loan, I want to pay off all of this stuff, so you don't have all these payments that you
Oh,
have
that's
to
why
pay.
their closing costs are so high.
So, yeah, so basically, the lender may say, well, I want to pay off. If you do see it, you may see a lender saying, hey, we're going to pay off, you know, Zelles, we'll pay off Discover or whatever, and we'll eliminate your debt. So therefore, your debt to income ratio is not so high. But here, they're paying off this Prosper Marketplace. I'm not sure, but it's close to 16,000. Discover was about 6,000. JCPenney was about 2,000, and then looks like Community
That
was
is
about
like,
374.
store credit cards.
So-
Like Victoria's Secret, all those store credit cards.
Right. But either way, the lender's saying, hey, you know, we'll approve the loan, but we'll also approve paying this stuff out. And they may even require that they close the account, or they may require that they maintain a certain balance, but
So
that's what that is.
So the lender is providing money to pay this off?
Yeah, because they're gonna pay the lender back regardless.
Okay, so the lender's just assuming all of those and then the borrower will pay
Yep.
it.
Yep,
Okay.
that's all gonna get paid off at closing. So the lender can rest assured that the buyer's gonna pay them and not this other debt that's out here. Maybe on an old credit card from 10 years ago, the buyer's like, I don't wanna pay this, I don't even use whatever that is anymore. So it behooves the lender to have a first lien position on the property as well as reducing the overall debt of the consumer. So that's what that accomplishes. All right, any other questions? You sure? All right, well, for those who
Look
came,
at that more, because you may have some questions on it.
okay, how about check it out? Right here?
Check up the top is for. No, go back to the yellow part. You know, I keep going down.
Right here?
No. Right. Click into it.
Now click over there, click it, and then go up to chat.
Ah. Okay.
So it's
Good
people
morning,
asking
what's the
questions.
lender's name? Would there also be a super admin? These are lenders.
I asked those questions already, but that one, or the lender's disclosure sheet that they give to the buyer close to master settlement as far as money owed by buyer.
Great question, so, Salita. So her question is, are the lender's disclosure sheet that they give to the buyer close to the master settlement statement as far as money owed by buyer? That's a great question. I mean, it should be pretty close, but the thing is that for buyer, whenever you represent a buyer, you do want to explain to them, hey, numbers can change. Numbers change all the time. A good lender is going to send out the closing disclosure 3 days prior to closing because that's what is required in Georgia law. But those numbers may not be right on point. There may be some HOA fees that are added in later. There may be any type of fees that come up. Typically, a lender is going to say, hey, this is the amount we're thinking. But when they send out a number, they may say, well, we think you need 7,500, but wiring 8,000, so just in case numbers change, you're not going to have to go back outside of closing in order to get extra money. And if there's money that comes back to the buyer receives that excess cash to close at closing. That's a great way for a good lender to approach it. There are times where the lender says, hey, bring in 6,000, but they really need 6,700. So the buyer comes in and they sign, and they go back out and have to get a money order or whatever in order to get us the remaining amount. And typically buyers don't like that. So from an agent standpoint, I would recommend that you always disclose to your buyers, hey, this is the amount they had for you to bring in, but you know, numbers are very susceptible to change. So don't be surprised if the numbers go lower or if they go up a couple of $100 or if you need to bring in extra money. Some things are just inevitable and some things do change. So that's a great point to make, especially for first-time home buyers. You out here? Okay, all right, see you later, Katrina. Any other questions?
Thank you, Courtney.
My pleasure, and we got some donuts over there for you guys if you want. All right, any other questions? Okay, all right, well, thank everybody for their attendance. Good luck with everything. Be safe in the pandemic, and if you guys have any questions or concerns, reach out to us. All right, see you later.
Was there a sign sheet I'm supposed to sign or something?
She just said, I don't know what that is. I don't think so, but if so, it would be from, yeah, if there is a sign-in sheet, they would have, I didn't have one for you guys to sign. Okay, how do I stop this thing, you know?
Right here.
Stop.
Right here? Stop video,
No, stop share right there.
right here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I appreciate
And
you.
you
In right here,
and then that was.
and